Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our reading of Sacred and Terrible Air by Robert Kurvitz, translated by Group Ibex. Let's jump back into it with Chapter 11. 11. Self-Chiller. In the early 50s, a young mother watches her 4-year-old boy at the playground in Lovisa. It is the middle of summer. The poplars are shedding gray tufts, and the sun is shining in the sky. But the mother is worried. Other children run around the playhouse. The boys giggle and pull girls by their pigtails. The suspension bridge of the playhouse wobbles as the little ones rush across its planks. Below, on the wooden edge of a large sandbox, girls and boys build a city together. A bright, blonde-haired girl spins a tiny model ship around the tower, and 2 boys dig a tunnel, one on one side of the ridge, the other on the other side. The tunnel meets in the middle, and the boys laugh triumphantly. The girl is bored. She starts crying, and other girls come to ask what's wrong. Only little Ulv sits alone, far away, on the other side of the sandbox. And if someone asks him about the lonely house that Ulv has built on his enormous piece of land, Ulv doesn't answer. He just stares vaguely into the distance and smiles his mysterious, childish smile, like he's somehow too cool for that. Too cool of a guy to tell the rest of the brats about his house. The others soon tire of Ulv's arrogant demeanor and leave him alone. The young mother doesn't understand why her child isn't interested in having company. Even with his parents, Ulv hasn't exchanged more than 10 words. He does talk, but only when he's alone, talking with himself. Sometimes his mother listens to him from another room, and doesn't understand what is wrong with her little boy. A distant street parade can be heard. The bass drum thumps, da-dum, da-dum. Ulv sits in proud solitude in the corner of the sandbox and bobs his curly head back and forth to the rhythm of the music. It looks like he's self-chilling. It's Wednesday afternoon in the forest near Jesper's house. This time, Khan comes first, and the others try to keep up with him. He's heavily caffeinated, and he hasn't slept. All night long, he flicked Harnenker's lights on and off, made coffee and long-distance calls, and listened to sad songs until his mother asked him to turn it down. Khan waves his hands as he speaks, his orange windbreaker unzipped, allowing a striped scarf in Ilmarin turquoise, orange, and violet colors to flutter free. His mother knitted it for him for the winter solstice, and then made a pom-pom beanie, also in Ilmarin colors, for his last birthday. They come as a set. The forest path winds between the hills, tall pine trees on both sides of the road, the 3 of them side by side, Jesper in the right wheel rut, Therese on the left, and Khan right in the middle on the tuft of grass, come down the hill of snow and sand along the road. The grass is frost-patterned, crunching at their boots. Individual snowflakes fly in the air. The dry end of autumn scenery sparkles. Khan breathes in the fresh air. The lichen decays. He slaps his mittens together on their string, then flings them over his back. I've never believed in a criminal solution. You know that. Every step forward is a step forward, and in that sense, of course, it's great to hunt down linoleum salesmen. But, Therese, sometimes I feel like you collect these guys like I collect memorabilia. You know? And now, I don't mean it in a bad way, of course. Therese blows large puffs of silver-gray astra smoke and makes rings in the middle, which are scattered by the quiet wind. No offense taken. You're right, too. You collect this stuff because you think you'll find something about the girls. I collect my monsters for the same reason. And what do you collect, Jesper? Asks Khan. I don't collect anything, you morbos. But it's nice when a man has a hobby, I guess. Listen, what's going to happen now? Well, Trent Muller's possessions must be searched, his relatives must be interviewed. Therese lists on his leather-gloved fingers. And what do you mean you saw that he didn't do it? The forest road bends. Light brown hay like a person's hair fills the ruts and rustles under Jesper's feet. Oh, you're not sure? You can never be sure of the psychedelic cabinet of Captain Pepe Paupicarnassus, interrupts the hyperactive Khan and turns around. Taking a few steps backwards, he explains to Therese, "That's why Zaum is not admissible in court. It's psychedelia. You understand, it doesn't help on its own. Reality has to correspond with it. There have to be witnesses and things. It's all nonsense anyway."
Well, I wouldn't say that it's completely pointless.
Therese throws his cigarette butt under the trees. An orange spark bouncing up where it lands.
But you're right about Pepe Paupicarnassus. The subject's fantasies and realities get mixed up in there. It seemed to me that it was more like an aspect of him, with one that ceased to exist. Or, if I get time, I should let the local authorities investigate these things.
But now it's, how do you say, basta? Asks Khan.
Right. Now it's basta. Yeah.
Great. Because let's be honest, who wants to find them in a ditch somewhere? Really, that's not a goal in itself. That won't amount to anything.
Khan waits for comment with a sly smile and sees Therese raise his hand. I want to, and it is a goal in itself. Have you ever heard of the concept of closure? There is such a thing as that.
Jesper still looks down on Pepe Paupicarnassus's synthesizer whirring, the masturbation of an overrated futurist. Do you have something better to offer? Tempus Rev, this time we'll do everything by the book.
It wouldn't be bad. Honestly, I wouldn't say no to that either. Come on, Khan, be sensible.
The cold air smells of match sulfur as Therese lights his next smoke.
Time is running out. Communication is broken down with Revachol, and with the Occident. Half the world is on high alert. When war comes, all investigations are stopped. Documents, papers, and people can get lost. You have to work quickly. Tie up all the loose ends before it's too late.
3 small silhouettes move through the undergrowth at the edge of the fields. They just keep their balance while arguing over the log bridge, where ice drifts downstream out of the trees. They jump over fallen trees in the twilight of a forest tunnel and move single file through white meadows. Khan ducks under a barbed wire fence, and Jesper, like Therese, jumps over. The paddocks are left behind. The forest thins out. The sandy furrow of the road sits below the line of tree roots like a tiny canal. A sea breeze rustles in the treetops above, and in the air you can feel how the vastness of the body of water is growing closer. You've been doing your thing for so long, and nothing has come of it. Give me a chance, too, Khan explains, more with his hands than with his mouth.
Okay, you're right that it's at a dead end, Therese admits. But then, why don't you just say what the plan is and let us think about it? If I think that something can come of it, then okay, let's do it. If not, then we have to take time off.
You don't understand, Khan says with a shrug. If you say no, we'll never know. There are no other leads anymore. I can't risk you saying no. Let's take a little trip first, eh? Go and talk to a professional. We should have been in contact with him a long time ago. Now we're a little too rushed.
What do you mean there are no other leads? Jesper doesn't understand. What about Malin's letters? Someone had to send them, and the handwriting was a match. By that age, the handwriting would have developed a bit, and a 15-year-old's handwriting may not match a 13-year-old's 100%. A 95% match is very promising. I've read about it, right, Therese?
Yes, that's right, Khan jumps in. But you know what? I have an idea about how we can fix it. Right now, it's no use to just wait around. We've got to take action immediately.
What idea?
Well, I put an ad in the newspaper.
Therese ambles along in his 50s-style herringbone coat, looking like a true Kokyo, his mouth thoughtfully ajar. That might not be such a bad idea at all. When did you post this ad?
I submitted it yesterday. It should appear today. I put your number there too, Jesper, in case I'm not at home myself.
And what did you write there?
That if anyone has any information, they should come forward. That nothing bad will happen, to please help out, you know.
This kind of thing can be more effective than you think, Therese explains to Jesper, especially with such old things. But you still have to fish for months and months on different columns. Where did you send it?
To Dagens and Capitalist. I had no more money.
By the way, you both owe me a 50. And the consultant I recommend is going to need some too. And we need money for the trip. We'll need at least 1,000. He's very expensive, very highly valued. I've been waiting for it for so long, reading about him.
Jesper is getting impatient. First of all, he certainly doesn't want to go anywhere right now. And secondly, he already knows whose money they're talking about here. Con lives off the settlement from when his father died on a fuel oil rig. And if Therese doesn't start an investigation, he won't be covered for anything. Listen, lay it out. What kind of consultant are we talking about here? The three silhouettes reach the rocky bank. The vastness of the sea greets them across the dried meadow. The grass is white spotted from the snow, and a single shriveled pine tree sways in the wind. The sky darkens as the men approach the edge of the bank. Jesper pulls his coat collar tighter, the roar of the sea ringing in his ears. He often walks these 6 kilometers to the bank alone. From here you can see what they all long to see. The beach strip of Charlottesville on the other side of the bay, in the snowy distance. Con leans on the log railing and looks down. Gargantuan waves smash against the rock wall, the water curving, and the white crest of the wave breaking into a million clumps of foam. The view through the man's glasses blurs from the spray. Jesper appreciates the autumn current. It comes once a year, and now he has a clear plan. Let them go. I tell the girl that I'll go too. Then think of something else to tell the boys. He measures the wind.
The self-chiller, says Con. It's high time to talk to him about the girls.
Jesper starts to laugh, but Therese is serious.
Wait. He confirmed the skeletons of Abadanias and Dobreva to the nearest kilometer, explains Con. More, 2 years ago, following his tip, they went to Corpus Mundi to look for Cornelius Gordy. The chain he brought out has now sunk into the Pale, but they found Gordy's cutlery in the remains of his camp nearby. After 500 years. The self-chiller, Jesper, he lives in Lemon Cays, in a country house in the woods, and we're going there.
It's snowing on the tin gray sea. The temperature is at 0. The wind in the Gulf is less than 10 meters per second, and for the next 2 weeks, storms in western Katla, right at the edge of the Pale, will cause the ocean to swell. A 2-week window. Perfect conditions. Jesper can already feel how the mass of water breaks into waves on the Charlottesville beach. 10 kilometers from here. The prows of waves move in his eyes, long and stable like beautiful thoughts. Okay, says Jesper, but I have a conference of my own, design stuff, from Thursday to Saturday. And by the way, Lemon Cays is not a very good idea right now. Or maybe you didn't hear. Little Ulv is 9 years old when modern dance music is born in Orange. Johan Hauer, Rietveld, and Arno van Eyck spin records in university halls, in Vesper, in Witterund. The world's first disco Das Baum opens on a summer evening in Messina's Arcade Square after the most epic set in human history, and the ecstatic crowd crowns Theo von Koch to be an innocence. Ulf comes home from school wearing a backpack. He is in the 4th grade, and he sits alone on the back row because he doesn't care what the teacher says. Ulf is not interested in mathematics, and the natural sciences don't interest Ulf either. Ulf isn't interested in mean girls. Ulf is only interested in one thing in this world. On his way home, he stops with his mouth agape in front of the phono store in Vestermalm, where music lovers file in and out. Theo van Koch's Coma remix of one of the old overtures plays, and music lovers watch with tapes under their arms as little Ulf dances under the speakers in front of the store, as if possessed by an evil spirit. Tears flow down Ulf's cheeks, and the whole world evaporates. Everyone laughs and watches with delight as the little boy squirms and scrambles, spins, bellows, waves, shouts. Wow, no way! He punches the air with his hands and feet, slams his palms against the hood of a motor carriage, and they simply cannot understand. How is he so hardcore? It can't be that hardcore. A clerk in a trendy sweatshirt comes out of the store, from out of the gray chaos of lost things where a coma echoes over human history.
a young man steps in front of Ove and hands him a Stereo 8 tape. Theo Van Gogh, it says on the cover. Comte de Perouse Maîtresse. This is the first and last time in Ove's life that a living person has been worth something to him. The motor carriage's chrome tire spins, and snow crunches under the wheel chains, but Inayat Khan is not there. He is 13 years old, and he steps down from the porch of Teresa's father's cottage into the apple orchard. It's dark, and grasshoppers are chirping. The self-chiller puts the Stereo 8 tape into the player, 2 plastic discs spinning. A sound check is in progress, but that June night is quiet. The music is not audible way out there. It's 20 years in the future, and a long, long way from Inayat Khan. The air is filled to the brim with scents. It meets the boy like a spirit from under the trees, circling around his knees and smelling of early ripening Swiss lips. Khan walks barefoot on the dew-soaked grass. The other boys are sleeping inside, on the second floor, but he couldn't sleep. At 8:30 in the morning, they had gone to work together. Khan's body is exhausted from the construction work, but his heart is restless. The money isn't there to make ends meet either. The dealer, ZIGI, quoted astronomical sums on the other end of the phone. 300 real. Jesper took his man from Helmdahl collection of adventure novels to the antique store, after a lot of persuasion. Khan sold his binoculars. 16-stroke combustion chambers beat in the heart of the machine, far away in Lemon Cays. The windows of a country house vibrate to a bass rhythm. Check, check. But Inayat Khan is not there. A Swiss-lap drops onto the grass at his feet. Little Inayat polishes the apple clean on his shirt sleeve and takes a seat on the garden bench. He crunches into the fruit and feels a sweet pain stabbing in his heart, making it hard to breathe. It's the feeling of a possibility slipping out of your hand, which grows throughout the day and then makes itself felt in the evening. Talk about something. You always have such awesome presentations in history and science classes. Dark green eyes, extremely kind, and so very interested. Are you there, Khan? Try to be reasonable now. There's no point in humiliating yourself like that for nothing. There is steam under the hood. The engine belt is running. The tape slides against the magnetic reader, but it's still quiet in the apple orchard. Inayat Khan doesn't believe in God, not especially. God was apparently invented by some man named Pius in Elmara sometime, certainly more than 3,000 years ago. Maybe. But now Khan throws the apple core into the bushes, brings his hands together, and prays. Please, make Malin like me back. God, please make it so that she really likes me. Not just, well, you know, 'cause you're God. I promise that then I will no longer think that some guy, Pius of Paracarnassus, invented you. I promise I will believe then that you have existed from the beginning of time and drawn heaven and earth with your, golden compass or whatever it was. I'm sorry, God, that I'm ragging on you like this. But look, it's really hard for me to believe that you exist when Malin Lund doesn't like me. Khan looks up at the sky. It's spinning in the darkness of his heart. The expanse lighting up star by star. Love, like a sleek, furred cat curling into a ball inside his belly. Love, for him, is the fear of loss. The red glow of the taillights turns the snow blood-colored. Fumes rattle out from the muffler of the motor carriage. The chained tires swish on the snow, and the engine rumbles for a moment. Gear shift, tone rising. The acceleration pushes the reckless driver against the backrest. In the driver's cabin, the young man's fingers are frozen to the steering levers, and his racing glasses are on. An unlit mountain road is reflected in the frosty surface of the glass as it disappears under the wheels. And the atmosphere roils above the lemon case zone of interplanetic catastrophe. The snow-speckled peaks of dark mountain ranges cut into the horizon, gritted teeth like those of a linoleum salesman.
At the bottom of the valley, among the clearings and spruce forests, a black motor carriage is speeding along a winding road at 150 kilometers per hour. "This is fucking awesome," exclaims Khan. Therese nods. Fuel oil exhaust fills the cool air of the cabin until it's like industrial acid. The agent looks out of the window. The fence posts lining the road are flying by in the falling snow, and white masses of forest are visible from the valley below, checkered with dark logging squares. Khan jumps out of the seat next to Therese and into the seat opposite Therese. He lets the last drop from the wine bottle fall onto his tongue. A curve knocks him against the wall of the cabin with a crash. "Done." He shows Therese the empty bottle. Immediately, a new flavored berry wine appears in Khan's hand. The screw cap flies off with a crinkle. Sugar 25% crunches between his teeth. Far away on the other side of the valley, on the opposite slope, lights flash in the dark. All the other machines have been moving in the opposite direction since Wednesday night, away from the entroponetic catastrophe. That was when Khan, Agent Majicek, and the mad Sure's rally driver Kenny, just Kenny, had set off together from Vasa. "What's your name?"
Kenny.
"Kenny who?"
Vain Kenny. Just Kenny. Keto. Entroponitisn Romaduxin Vajokik. Aivoeola. Kusetkin rupe taivasin. Ajotuman satana. Ihan queen sanoi. Sekila te nada. Chatalot mios. Look, the zone of entroponetic collapse. It can't be. Even the spruces are starting to drift into the sky. Fucking hell. Just like they said, this truly is a must-see. And the houses, too.
Kenny barks from the driver's seat over the engine noise. "How's it going?" shouts Khan in response. He, unlike Therese, is still a little worried when the machine shakes, and in the darkness of the driver's seat, in the yellow glow of the speedometer, he sees the pointer move to 170.
I nosti mani, ihan I nosti, and lady Olenkan. It's going great, totally great. I'm not worried at all.
"And the road? How is the road?"
Etamika tieko. I Ivanon and lady Olenkan. Say what? The road? No, it's all good. I'm not worried at all.
Kenny isn't worried at all. Kenny wants some flavor-berried wine instead, and when Khan thinks Kenny shouldn't drive drunk, Kenny says,
"Halia lady, all right? Maun polet tietu joano jo, muten man nukas tistan, se ota mua keskitiman keto." Don't worry, all right? I've been drinking half the trip already, otherwise I'd fall asleep. It helps me focus, you see.
The road continues along the hillside, between spruce trees. Kenny drifts on the curves in order to stay on the road. Khan feels safer only when the motor carriage plunges down the slope and deep into the forest along the village road. Snow crunches under the tire chains, and the engine screeches. The square window panes have been totally covered in snow, with only circles of visibility left. A ghostly black forest wall flutters beyond the portholes. Suddenly, Kenny pulls to the left side of the road, and Khan jumps back to his side. They whiz past a red Grad telecom van. The news agency camera crew waves at Khan from their own snow-frosted window. Khan waves back. He's been drinking in the cabin with Therese for the last 2 days. Kenny refuses to stop. He wants to break a record. He has a stopwatch on his hand, and the whole time they watch all the rest of the traffic go the other direction. Even 200 kilometers out from Vasa, the traffic jam was still crawling along in the opposite lane. People from the outskirts, on their way to cities to visit relatives. From the hiss of the car radio, they learned that a similar panic was taking place everywhere in Katla. In Arda, Norrköping is the place where everyone flocks just in case, for its floating train stations. Tickets for the next 2 months are also sold out in Ulinka, near the collapsed Northern Passage. You can't escape. A last resort might be to leave by foot over the Boreal Plateau. The wide, open landscape out the side window gradually became rounded, hazy whalebacks gliding on the horizon, with spruce forests riding the humps. The motorway also changed into a highway late in the night, but the traffic in the opposite direction didn't thin out. The road just came down from its pillars into the middle of the fields, where land was a gleaming white from the thickly fallen snow. Con fell asleep with his head against the side window. In the darkness before them shone a diamond sea of headlights on one side of the road, and the bare, empty pavement on the other. A single pair of red taillights slid hurriedly towards Lemon Cays. Only military convoys and the machines of foreign news agencies with radio antenna units on their roofs went alongside them. In the morning, Con opened his eyes to a deserted Surrey's village passing by outside the glass. Waves of electric wires meandered between the poles, and below them, on an empty village street, a country girl in a long skirt and jacket was riding a bicycle. She looked Con straight in the eyes, reflectors shining on the spokes of her bike. They were 1,500 kilometers in from the border of Vasa, and 1,500 more were still ahead. Kenny drove quietly. In the cabin, they could hear the ice breaking in the mud puddles under the wheels. The girl waved and turned onto a side road at the outer border of the settlement. The darkness of the forest gate engulfed her, the rear light of her bicycle flashing to the rhythm of its dynamo. It was already snowing in the tree tunnel ahead, so they went. Inayat Khan, Therese Majijek, and the meanest guy in the taxi fleet. Kenny. Just Kenny. For a few hours, the boys sat quietly and watched Surrey's land pass by in the haze of twilight. The cold stars of street lights lit up in the distance. Eternite crumbled from the roofs of the houses. The closer the night got, the thicker the snow became. As the dark, saw-toothed mountains appeared on the horizon, and the villages became less and less frequent, Therese suggested popping open a flavored berry wine. Otherwise, it gets depressing. Above the darkening mountains ahead, they often saw military airships. Once, an iron barge whizzed straight across the bridge and caught them in its floodlights, its downdraft threatening to upend their motor carriage. But then the ship was gone. Only her lights were still visible, gliding through the darkness above the forest. This is what's called an evacuation. The checkpoint stood abandoned by the road, along with glowing letters reading Lemon Cays. A military barricade made of concrete blocks ran across the road. Kenny put snow chains on his wheels and turned over half a field in the process of driving around the fence. The border point disappeared behind them, along with the invisible boundary of winter's orbit, beyond which is eternal winter. And the asphalt also disappeared over time. They encountered rural families on sleds along snowy gravel roads. It is their great privilege to have seen the Pale with their own eyes, where it has towered behind the silo since childhood. A passing family, propped up on all their belongings on a horse-drawn sleigh, waved at the funny fat man with dark yellow skin and diamaterialist glasses. "How strange. They wave every time," says Con, as the Grad telecom van falls behind them in a cloud of snow kicked up from under the wheels of Kenny's machine. Far away in the dark forest, neither headlight nor sled lights blink any longer. Only those who want to stay here are left now, in the farmyards, the fronts of the combine factories, and the closed village shops. The Pale rises in the dark.
"Kuletko sen, do you hear that?" asks Kenny from the driver's seat. "Harma, sian night varmasti arma, muavan holestuda." The Pale. That's definitely the Pale now. I'm a bit worried. Therese and Con listen. Indeed, a new sound is growing out of the storm. An ominous rumble, a low, crackling noise, like a wave breaking, slowly, slowly. To Con, it sounds like the beginning of a song. He heard it in a dream. "I'm not with the ICP anymore. They let me go," Therese shouts, drunk, hands raised to his mouth and shaped to amplify his voice. "What?" Con can't hear at first,
The noise is mesmerizing. He feels the hairs on his body stand up, and chills run through him, as if he had just taken off his sweater in a cold room.
They let me go from the collaboration police.
I know, Khan exclaims, handing Therese the flavored berry wine. You've been showing some Somerset Ulrich's guy's badge the whole way.
How'd you know?
From Therese's mouth, the smell of alcohol wafts into the cold cabin. Because all the border checkpoints called you Mr. Ulrich and Agent Ulrich and Somerset Ulrich.
That's a missing agent whose papers I took. I've got more of 'em.
Therese takes a sip. His lips are red, and a sticky liquid spills from the neck of the bottle onto his shirt collar.
The papers, I mean. And the missing agents. I went by Matchajek in Kronstadt. Otherwise, they wouldn't pick up the trail. I thought I'd go to Lemon Case with Somerset Ulrich and abandon the trail. Let them follow me.
You're wanted, aren't you?
Yes, haven't I told you? A guy had a heart attack from that little thing.
From Zaum, or?
Exactly, says Therese.
And in front of him, the Surrey's rally ace Kenny sees the black mass of the forest slowly drifting into the sky. The earth crunches and cracks as the spruce trees tear themselves out of it, roots and all. The wood screams, and the frozen earth too, like they're in a dentist's chair. A cloud of limestone gravel flies into the air, and far above in the dark, the first trees are subsumed in the pale. "2 years ago. Khan hears the phone ringing throughout his dream. A cold and strange noise, a false awakening. He opens his eyes in his mother's basement and gets up, clad in his pajama pants and slippers. He feels that something is different, but he still goes. The basement around him is rendered strange by the dream. Things are in the wrong places. Nadia Harnenker smiles eerily in her locket, and Gonzu has a page of immortality in his hand instead of a compass. It's molding. An empty glass display case shines on the table in the middle of the room. Khan doesn't dare look in there. There's something in its emptiness that he can't remember. Something wrong. There's something wrong with the phone ringing, too. How it sounds through the darkness of the apartment from the upstairs hallway. He goes up the stairs. The hallway sleeps around him. The phone rings on the wall. He reaches out, afraid. His hand sweats on the plastic of the receiver, and feels something forbidding him from answering. But he has to. It's important. Every thread is. So he picks up the receiver, and the hallway fills with the hiss of the pail. It grates in his ear. "Hello?" asks Khan, but no one answers. "Hello? Who is it? Please tell me who you are," he repeats, more and more pleading each time. The hissing becomes louder and louder, until finally it deafens him. The pressure in his inner ear goes awry, and only that vibration from who knows where remains. Its center. The silence goes through his flesh and bones like waves. It's cold. "Please," plump tears flow from under Khan's glasses. "Tell me who you are." "You know who I am." The vibration emits a child's voice. It says terrible things with it. Khan begins to shake. He slumps in the corner of the hall, receiver in hand. "It's not you. It's not you," he cries. His real body shakes along with his mind. He wakes up crying in his bed. His ear throbs. The dream continues while he's awake, only that there is an airship model in the display case again. Nadia no longer smiles, and Gonzu is holding a compass. Sitting on the display case are dried cheese sandwiches from his mother and tepid coffee, and an envelope, a morning shipment from Grad by magnetic post. Saryan and Bartsumyan is written in the sender's area, and inside is a single key, golden and immeasurably complicated. He has 2 years. "12. ZIGI. 19 years ago, in late autumn. It's 8:15 a.m., and Con is late for school. He hurries along in the city center of Königsbaum. White streaks of traffic glow in the morning darkness, and thick sleet falls. With a backpack on his back, the boy runs across a crosswalk. There's a honk, and a motor carriage whizzes by. He almost got run over. The slushy snowflakes aim for his eyes and melt on his cheeks and woolen hat. Con is running up the stairs to the main door when something pins him in place. The financial manager and the cleaning lady are scrubbing at a big red letter O on the corner of the school's facade. The letter is as tall as the cleaning lady. A policeman shakes his head and looks up at the wall, where a huge slogan decrees, "The whole world is a zone of imminent anthroponetic catastrophe." That is the kind of boy ZIGI is. ZIGI is the baddest boy in school. ZIGI is so bad that some would even say that ZIGI is too bad a boy. He's in year 10, but you know what? He came here from another school, and Sixton knows someone at that school, and that person said that ZIGI came to their school from another school as well. Guess which year ZIGI was in there? Exactly, the 10th, I swear it. And you know what else? The school he was at before that, he was in the 10th year there too. ZIGI's mother is a radiant Vasan woman who works in the Ministry of Education and gets along well with the matriarch of the Lund family. That's why the boy can go to school in the city center, even though he's had to repeat a year twice. At home, he has checkered notebooks, filled with all kinds of siege machines, city walls, and trajectories, but ZIGI doesn't want you to know about that. ZIGI's father is a nihilist, a kokyo and a drunkard. ZIGI is very proud of this. My father, I don't know, a nihilist, a kokyo, a drunkard. ZIGI's real name is Sigismund Berg. Therese saw him once in the boys' bathroom, raised his left hand into a fist, and said, "František the Brave." ZIGI said nothing. ZIGI was taking a piss. Piss, piss. Then ZIGI went to the door and stood there for a moment. The zippers on his leather jacket jingled. "Hey, listen, man." "What?" "Stick that František the Brave up your ass." ZIGI is a nihilist, and a communist, too, if necessary. The word bourgeois hangs from his lips like a butterfly knife. Bourgeois, the bourgeoisie, typical bourgeois, bourgeois art, petite bourgeois opinion. You are bourgeois. Your bourgeois parents. Your parents are bourgeois. It is because your parents are bourgeois. It is because you are bourgeois, Anne. ZIGI also calls his teachers by their first names. Whore of the bourgeoisie. Puppy of the bourgeois. Pederasty is a bourgeois disease. Pederasts are bourgeois. ZIGI is a well-read boy, and is also familiar with all the other beautiful names of the bourgeoisie. Persuis, bourgeois, petite bourgeois, bougie, burger, kulak, middle class, rentier, big landlord. His influence is enormous. A girl with pigtails from the 4th grade comes home and asks, "Dad, why is social democracy so weak?" "Where did you hear such a thing?" "ZIGI said that social democracy is weak and communism is powerful. Why don't we have communism, Dad?" But above all, ZIGI is still a nihilist. He reads Diamat, says that animals are automatons, is a fan of behaviorism, and adores the pale and the nihilistic innocence of Mask, Ambrosius San Miro. If you had a bit of courage, even an ounce of it, you would also follow San Miro. ZIGI talks about his homeland in the midst of a coup d'etat. It is no longer part of ZIGI. ZIGI has no homeland. The geography teacher sent him to the principal's office, and ZIGI stopped at the door, the zippers of his leather jacket jingling. "See you in the Pale," he said, and ran his index finger across his throat. Back when anthropodynamics was not discussed at school, many people gathered around ZIGI during recess, and the corridor echoed with his half-truths. "The Pale is made of the past," he said. "All the lost things are jumbled up there, sad and abandoned. The Pale is the world's memory of the world. It accumulates matter and sweeps away everything in its path. This is what's called anthroponetic collapse." "But when will it happen, ZIGI?" "Yes, ZIGI, when?"
It will happen in your lifetime, little all. At least, I hope so. History swallows the present. The world of matter disappears. Desaparecido. That's why there's no point in our generation going to school. There will be no future. When you grow up, don't have children like your underdeveloped bourgeois parents did. You'll get to see them die, and that's it. Compared to the Pale, there's only a small amount of the world left. In the end, the Islas will sink, dozens and hundreds of square kilometers of landmass. Can you even imagine? Like a ship keeling over the Pale. Foom.
ZIGI makes a sinking ship gesture with his hands, the zippers of his leather jacket jingling. The children gasp.
Oh, don't worry, y'all. This will be the peak of humanity.
ZIGI smokes. In the school bathroom, in the wardrobe corner.
ZIGI has a Sprechgesang band, and the manager made a big mistake when he let ZIGI perform on the winter solstice. ZIGI's Sprechgesang is like a machine gun, 400 rounds per minute.
Hook. Have a smoke in the school bathroom, in the wardrobe corner. Abracadabra, in the lobby. Ah, yeah, in the cafeteria queue. First verse. Nasty morning. It's dark. I'm tired. Nasty slush. Mood 0. Down by the corner of the house. Mama doesn't see. I light a fat ciggy. Do you get it? Makes me feel good. Chubby cig. I'm warm inside. Everything disappears. Hook. Abracadabra. In the school bathroom. In the wardrobe corner. Abracadabra. Vanish like the world. And so on. In January, ZIGI was expelled from school. And mind you, it wasn't because of his confusing rhymes. In the tolerant educational space of Vasa in the 50s, such Sprechgesang was seen as rather a natural part of the development process. The issue was that ZIGI was a drug dealer. That's why he came to that school in the first place. At that time, no one could have expected such a thing, and ZIGI was more than aware of it. He acted fearlessly, talked openly and loudly about transactions during lessons, distributed samples, and reaped the benefits of Vasa's naivete, like Vidkun Heerd, or the linoleum salesman. He also partook himself. He came to class high. He was an anachronism, 20 years ahead of his time. Sigismund Berg was a dark, spewing stain. When the police finally tracked him down, ZIGI emigrated to his father in Grad and dropped off the radar. A few years later, his charred body was found in an incinerator on the heating floor of a particularly depressing block of flats. 13. Matterimony. Little Jesper de la Gardie frowns under the sun, a lock of blonde hair hanging annoyingly in the corner of his eye. He is standing at the transportation hub of his own sense of time. Everything leads here, and everything starts from here. He's wearing a white sailor suit for this occasion, and he holds a sailor hat with a dark blue brim in his hand, squeezing it nervously. Jesper is 13 years old. He has a bottle opener in his trouser pocket, a handkerchief with his name on it, 24 speed pills, and a bouquet of lilies sitting on the bench next to him. All preceding time flows to this point, at the Charlottesville tram stop, and it is from this stop that everything to come emanates. It's the 1st of July in the year 52, and in the waiting area under the Funk Pavilion's dashing white arch, Jesper stands on the edge of a summer evening. He's scared. This amusement park attraction has been screeching in his ears since last Sunday, as he's been slowly carried up its lift hill. It's been like this the entire week. The height and the feeling of vertigo are waiting ahead of him. And the fall. He is so indescribably excited. The first tram comes, and the girls aren't there. Jesper feels a strange sense of relief, like when he proved to be too short for the Steel Mountains 3 years ago at the Rivershole amusement park. The danger is almost over, but when the next tram also pours passengers into the stop, the girls aren't among them either. The feeling turns upside down in his stomach, into disappointment. What if they don't come? It's 9:30, and they were supposed to be here an hour ago. You have to be at least this tall to ride the steel mountains, little boy. Jesper gets up on tiptoe and takes a sip of beer to reassure himself. Beer is a terrible idea. He knows it. Beer makes you smell like hops. It's a terrible idea, Therese. Beer stinks. Chicks hate beer. But after a week of construction work, a sum of 300 real to ZIGI, the baddest boy in the school, to redeem the mysterious pills, after record player batteries, flowers, and God knows what else, Therese had been right. He'd said, "We're out of options, Jesper. And dry. We won't go sober." So they'd stood in front of the beer stand as their helpful vagrant licked his lips and dreamed of taking a sip of his bribe. The vendor had looked down at the three naughty boys, and the boys had watched as the frothy liquid flowed from the cistern into the cardboard cups. "Like piss," commented Jesper. Con took the pint between his brown hands and watched as Jesper drummed his fingers against the brim of his sailor's hat. "Shut up and drink. Look at your shaky hands." You've drunk piss, if I'm not mistaken," Jesper declared cheekily and sniffed his cup. "We thought about maintaining a facade of virginity, but here you both are smelling as classy as piss." Con, with his low tolerance for jokes, had giggled and sucked some beer down the wrong pipe. Now Con is nervously pacing in front of the bus stop, kicking small pebbles across the road. Every now and then, a beachgoer gets hit in the foot with a pebble and shoots him an angry look. Con apologizes and waves his shirt, with its still drying beer stain, in the sea breeze. "Does it smell, Jesper? Tell me, is it noticeable?" "Yes, it stinks. It stinks really badly, and you can see the stain. Go check what time the next tram comes." "It's 9. 20 minutes to go." "No, don't tell me. Go check." Once Jesper has gotten rid of Con, he empties his cup. The cardboard flies toward the trash can and barely misses the edge. Damn it. Therese, freckled like a devil from the sun on the construction site, bounces on his knees and does a little jig in his ankle-laced Kirza boots. He has a portable record player hanging from leather straps on his back. Cream-colored plastic relief letters announce mono with modern audacity. The machine is enormous and weighs more than a load of bricks. In his hand, Therese tosses heavy batteries up and down. "Well, how is it? You buzzed?" he asks Jesper. "I'm buzzed." Jesper is buzzed, but not much. "It's good that way. The idea is to get some confidence, not to get knocked down. It's just to take the edge off." Therese tries to sound smart. He's probably the only one who isn't derailed by the hour-long delay. We, the potato-haired ragged kokyos, who were buzzed throughout a genocide, the Yugograd massacre. As long as we have a smelly hop drink or flavored berry wine on hand, we are not afraid of anything. Con takes his bunch of chrysanthemums from the bench, and now the three of them are sitting in a row, tapping their feet on the asphalt and patting their knees. Uncoordinated, unrhythmically. A sound of screeching rails comes from beyond the slope, and Therese's grip on his bouquet of 7 red roses tightens in fear. The clickety-clack of the hooves is approaching. The horses are already on the slope, and the silver insignia can be seen flashing on the driver's hat. Their buzz has vanished like a fart in the wind. Therese nervously picks at the silver paper of his flower bouquet. He wasn't playing around. 7 red roses, a full compliment. He would have bought an assortment of sweets, too, a posh one, in a box with gorgeous gold embossing like an Agradian novel, if only his pockets were lined with real. Something flashes from the tram cabin, and out of the corner of his eye, Therese sees Jesper stand up. Let Jesper be proud of his lilies. Let Con play around with chrysanthemums. Roses, red, 7 of them. Now that's chic. Ros I bombarnirka bardzo wikwinti Therese Machajek. The doors of the carriage fold open on the steel frame, and the boy doesn't even notice how the thorns are pricking his cramped hands. The anticipation is remembered in detail, but the incident itself is too brutal. The central moment remains hidden in time behind a veil of suspense. Something that sort of was, something he had done. The girls, 3 of them, stepped from the carriage onto the asphalt, knee socks on their long legs. My God, what cruelty! They've glammed up. Skirt edges flutter, casually chic, as if nothing big is happening. Charlotte, cool as she is, puts her hand on her hip and stands in front of him, but Therese, unable to play along, makes the mistake of embracing her. Arms around her, a gorgeous bouquet of roses hanging against the back of her dress, and, oh yes, the flowers are covered with gold dust. How wickwinty can it get? He notices a foreign scent on the girl's neck. They look at each other. Then Therese and the goddess from the 9th grade, and Therese, his face brown and red, a goofy smile up to his ears, says, "Hello." "Well, hello to you too," replies Charlotte with boyish charm, like it's nothing. She accepts the flowers, and together they go under the pines, where the evening sun doesn't reach. It is dark and quiet, and no one knows what to say. Outside, in the yard of the Self-Chiller's country house, Kenny maneuvers the motor carriage into a ready-to-go position. The heavy gas rattling of the machine merges with the noise of the forest mass in the distance, on the edge of the pale. You could even feel the sweeping pale from the big house, behind its stone-lined walls. The machine's lights cut in from the yard through the old manor house's dusty window, illuminating the hall and its cracked stone floor. A smiley face lights up on the window, drawn with a finger in the dust. No one came to the door when they knocked, and the padlock was invitingly open, with flashlights hanging from nails in the hallway. So Therese Machajek, a former ICP agent, and Inayat Khan, a basement-dwelling disapparatist, now walk through a maze of dark rooms with flashlights in hand. Rows of garden tools, a disassembled wheelbarrow, and piles of old furniture pass by in the flashlight beams. Khan fumbles between stacks of roof tiles, and the taller Therese in front of him has to practically crouch under the low ceiling. Another unoccupied broom closet. Looking into the next door, they can see a spacious kitchen with a black-as-coal vaulted ceiling, smelling of chalk and mold. Racks of bottles flash from within, along with what looks like half a stick of smoked sausage. Every now and then, Khan calls out for the master of the house, to no avail. "Are you sure we're at the right place?" Khan is sure. Therese feels as if he hears a sleigh bell ringing in the distance, muffled chaos out of the disaster. The ringing comes closer, phasing in and out like a dream. But it's not coming from outside, where tree roots rattle on the ground and electric wires crackle into the sky. It's coming from somewhere inside the house without electricity. Therese sits on a pile of waste paper and observes the dusty room around him with the flashlight. He's still a little tipsy from all that berry wine, but the darkness is sobering. Doors surrounded by all sorts of junk lead out in all 4 cardinal directions. He also thinks he hears the low sputtering of an electric generator in the background, in the heart of the house, and points himself toward it. Rattling a jammed door, he steps through it into a large, low-ceilinged hall. Therese turns the flashlight off and carefully steps over the springy floorboards. It's cool inside. The smell of gasoline cuts through the mold. Black snake's nests of tangled wire meander out from under his shoes towards the dim back corner of the hall. There, green and yellow lights are flashing rhythmically. The hall is barely lit by candles. They flicker on wagon wheel hubs suspended from the ceiling, casting yellowish circles of light on the floor where the windows are sunk into darkness. Therese stands in a circle of light and feels how the sound waves of the sleigh bells prowl around him, icy and alien. Equipment towers high above them, stacked in decks that lean against the plastered walls. Khan stops next to the door and runs his fingers over embossed lettering reading "Mono." "Therese," he whispers. "Mono. Look, and this one here says Hertz." The high-frequency notches just barely tremble under his fingers. "It's "A disco," Therese finishes with a nod. "This is a discotheque." 3/4 of a century ago, a dark night comes to the Ozone Islands. Everything is gray, dark gray, and under the overcast sky, black waves break on the sandy beach. Palm sabers swing over the heads of the revolutionary lovers. The coups have been thwarted. Everything has come to nothing. Dobreva opens her anarchist eyes, lined with dark makeup. A bit of dried poison bubbles in the corner of her mouth. Ampule fragments crunch between Abaddoniz's teeth. He strokes the woman's head. "Listen," he says. The mesmerizing rhythm of the bells rings over the water in the pitch black. Color has slowly started to seep into the black and white world. "A dance," Dobreva shouts, like a young girl. She gets up and goes. Abadanias follows her into the waves, the black water crashing around his ankles. "Do you hear that?" Therese asks Con. "Like some kind of ringing, right?" "Exactly." Therese lifts a wagon wheel hub bearing a candle from the end of a nail and points it into the dim recesses of the room. The two of them move reverently across the floorboards to the back of the hall. Bit by bit, rows of sliders on a mixing console appear from the dark. Monolithic speakers rise to the ceiling on both sides of the console, and behind it sits a young man in a trendy sweatshirt and headphones. The connecting bridge of the headphones presses his curly hair against his head. Ulf jerks his chin to the rhythm of the sounds, but his eyelids are squeezed shut, as if under high tension. "Mr. Ulf," Con whispers quietly. "Sorry, but..." "Shh." The young man puts his finger to his mouth. With his eyes still closed, he furrows his eyebrows so intensely that it seems as if an explosion is bubbling behind his eyelids. "Please, do not ruin my intro," he enunciates. Like a huge river, a superhuman cubic meter of partying is rushing up against the dam of the self-chiller's teeth. He points his fingers at the mixing console, where dozens and dozens of sliders move up with excruciating slowness. "This is the most important part." Con carefully places his envelope on top of the studio monitor, indicated by the self-chiller's trembling hand. Therese steps backward like he's in an explosives warehouse. Even so, he manages to read the girls' names from the envelope, and, still a trained agent, he doesn't fail to notice that there are actually two envelopes. There's another one hidden under the girls. Therese can't see what's written on it. He keeps his mouth shut as he and Con tiptoe through the house. The ringing of the bells around them grows even louder than the anthroponetic catastrophe outside, and it seems to him that the two are somehow in the process of harmonizing. Con and Therese make their way through minefields of junk-filled rooms. The sound rises behind them like a shockwave, a gunshot in slow motion, where everything is back as it was 80 years ago. Krasmazov rises from behind his cabinet in the black and white of history. Gunpowder smoke rises from his mouth, and outside, in the garden of the Parliament building, a sea of counter-revolutionaries roars. But Krasmazov no longer hears the treacherous voice of this world. The intro rings in the cabinet mirrors. "Well, what happened at the design conference? Ari Ackerlund talked about how he would have nothing against the war. Do you remember Ari? I once made the mistake of letting him sit on the couch next to me for a design magazine cover. Now everyone thinks he did something there too, Ari included. In his opinion, war today is more like a happening, a media experiment, and no, I can't rule it out. It could easily have happened. He could have used the word paradigm shift." Jesper paces circles in one of Havslanglar's top-floor hotel rooms and practices to himself. After he left the office, he went totally cuckoo. Writes music record reviews for Daggins. And by the by, he's gone deaf from nose candy. Really, it can happen. He's had a terrible collapsed nasal septum twice. You should see him. He looks just awful. Like a pig. How does he still write record reviews when he's deaf? No. See, he doesn't actually write reviews. He just summarizes foreign ones. He deducts 1 star for rock, and for disco, like you, Con, would say, he adds 2 stars on top. Jesper stands in front of the bed and nods approvingly at the cube-shaped beige table. "What happened in Lemon Case, you ask?" "Ah, just like that. We went with the boys. Surreal stuff, nothing bad about it. I really liked it. Snow, spruce trees, the end of the world." "What, dear? Why did we even go there?" "Well, a specialist lives there, see. Ulf is his name. And he knows how to throw a party by himself. Only a few are born this way. Most people tend to throw parties with other people. Otherwise they can't have any fun. But not Ulf. Ulf is a self-chiller, or so they say. Everything falls. You get a little drink, put on a record, dance, talk to yourself. Kind of like I do now, only harder. And then in the morning, when normal people go to work, you're still self-chilling. Jesper pulls the frilled curtains of the balcony windows open, and outside the sky is dim and cloudy. The balcony seems damp from the rain. Say what? Ah, yes. Well, as always, he talks with the dead. That's right, talks with the dead. They'll come if he plays them some Van Eyck and Old Rietveld. That's why he's alone like that. No, dear, apparently he doesn't tolerate Fackengaff. The door handle clicks, and Jesper steps onto the reed floor of the balcony. He communicates with the Pale. Well, whatever that means. You can understand how it would fascinate us, that thought. Yes, because of those girls, that's right. This is where Dierk Trentmuller watched them that day. Weird. He can't say he's creeped out here. It's a perfectly normal hotel room. A few less nautical paintings wouldn't hurt. The cattails in the hall are gross, and the wallpaper is... Well, the wallpaper is still just wallpaper. Otherwise, everything is peak 50s elegance. Jesper looks down from the balcony. Charlotte's Yule sand is damp in the rain, and autumn waves break on the beach. The balcony is high in the sky on the 12th floor. Jesper stands there alone. He spreads his arms. Don't be naive. Of course not really. But the show was good. The show is the most important thing in that particular field. Quackery, that is. Think of them as entertainers. Well then, where are we going for dinner? No, I really don't want to talk about it anymore. Before going out, Jesper stands in the middle of Hofsanglar, room number 1212. The cover on the sofa is moss green, and the frilled curtains seem apricot cream-colored in the soft light of the floor lamp. No, he doesn't mind. Outside, the world is uniformly grey, and the feminine chic of the room dozes smack in the middle of it. A real petite bourgeois dream. Jesper spreads his arms as if waiting for something to happen. He also takes a few defiant steps before stopping, defeated, with his hands on his hips. The dial of the radio shines on the cube-shaped bedside table. The clock is ticking. The curtains in front of the open balcony door billow like a sail. Please, Jesper says, and looks at the room, its clean walls and high ceiling. But nothing happens. Before the interior designer goes down to the beach, he says to the room in frustration, "Motherfucker." Jesper walks along the wet sand with a stubbornly determined step. The rushes rustle in the late autumn cold. The boys' cliff, now much smaller, looks bluish in the distance, through a mist of water droplets. A slender white surfboard cuts through the autumn sky like a saber. Jesper lifts his beauty above his head and casts haughty glances at the windsurfers in the water. You could spend 2 hours in the water in this wetsuit, playing around on the same dying wave as 10 other guys. No, Jesper is going to his spot. He already feels, deep in his chest cavity, how the waves are swelling there, waiting for him. A skirt shines in the dark of the pine forest, fluttering around the skinny, tanned legs of a 14-year-old girl. The boys follow after, an echelon led by the flag that is Charlotte's skirt. How long have they been going like this? They have never been to this side of the pine forest, where the sandy roads disappear into the muted green of blueberry shrubs. The familiar places were long behind them, the suspension bridges and the road that led up to the cliff. Everything passes by in dim silence, occasionally interrupted by broken bits of conversation. Shadows lengthen on the dunes, and far in the distance, the curtain of trees gradually parts. And the field ahead of them ripples in the salty sea breeze. A blood-orange sun hangs low in the sky above it. The sea of fumitories rustles as Charlotte's legs dissect it in their knee-high socks. 6 long clock hands slide across the field, the girls running with relief, and the boys following at their heels. Is it still Charlotte's Yawl? That field with the swaying reeds rising at its edges, where the brownish-beige carpet of hay transitions into a strip of fine white sand. Mammon stops and takes off her shoes. Next to Con, she breathes the sea air gluttonously into her dress-clad chest. On the horizon, in the light blue mirror of the water, another sun blazes, fractured like an explosion by a gentle breeze.
inky splashes of cloud, black against the light, are torn apart above the water. The children stand there among the reeds, all of them shading their eyes with their hands, and the reed giants bow reverently to them from either side. Annie, in shorts, plops onto the sand, and Therese stoically sets the portable record player down next to her on a clump of reeds. He pulls out the antenna in the silence of the arrival and switches the shortwave radio to a popular youth station. Guitar pop sounds from the speakers, in stark contrast to Therese's defeated mood. The girl hadn't tugged him back. How stiff she had seemed, Charlotte, and how straight she had held herself on the heels of her strapped shoes. He doesn't dare to look at her now. He feels that something has broken in the meantime. It feels like something had broken. Such a thing brings to mind the Yugo-Gradian massacre. When the buzz is gone, you'll find that our difficult nature comes out. After all, we are all Kokyos with potato-colored hair and hazel eyes. But Malin, the radiant northerner, happily snaps her fingers at the sun and asks Khan, "Did you get it?" "We did." Jesper jumps in. He watches satisfaction bloom on the girls' faces as he digs out a paper bag from the bottom of his pocket. Malin spreads the beach towel on the sand, and Annie pulls 6 sparkling bottles of water out from the depths of the bag. The bottles are set in a line in the sand, as Charlotte explains how it makes you extremely thirsty, how they'll have to fetch more water from the beach later. But that's all right. It will be an excellent adventure for the brave couple who dare to go. Shivers of excitement run through the boys at that word. Couple. Only Therese didn't notice. Therese is still thinking about the genocide. And they sit on the beach towel, the 6 of them in a circle with the girls opposite the boys, and Charlotte tilts the pills out of the paper bag into her hand. The bag rattles. Everyone's noses press in closer as they watch 24 crimson-red diamonds sparkling in Charlotte's palm. She tosses the gems from one hand to the other, the tiny little pills jumping happily. One bounces off. The girl goes, "Oops," and Malin picks it up from the sand like a trinket. She blows on it carefully, gives her older sister a reproachful look, and then runs her finger over the surface of the pill like a ruby polisher. Con sees how the girl's lips blush. They're the same color as cherry speed. "Listen, be a good man and tell me what it is," Therese finally blurts out, in the twilight on the playground. The zippers on the dealer, ZIGI's, leather jacket are jingling. It is yesterday evening, and a boy with black, greasy hair is walking on a seesaw. He places his jean-clad legs one in front of the other on the board, his arms outstretched for balance, and he begins. "You know how they say that drugs are a waste of your health?" The other end of the seesaw snaps to the ground as the boy passes the center. An escape from reality. Right, pointless nonsense. The question is rhetorical in nature. ZIGI answers it himself. "They're right. Nose candy makes you a bastard. Pop makes you an idiot. Stay away from that crap. It dulls the mind. And frankly, it's dangerous for an underdeveloped organism. It's not worth it." ZIGI jumps off the seesaw, sand flying up from under his sneakers. "But this particular drug, those people can only make such generalizations because they haven't yet." He pulls a paper bag out of his back pocket and shakes it under Therese's nose. "Done Samarin Neth. You can't even imagine how lucky you are right now." "What a waste. I don't understand why I'm even selling it. Why don't I do it all myself now?" ZIGI's black eyes glisten in the dimness. "This stuff is so new that it doesn't even have a name yet. Girls call it Cherry Speed. Boys say Samarin Amph. It comes from the People's Republic of Samara, that's why. All good things in this world come from the People's Republic of Samara. They bring it in through the Pale, the world's first communist-invented street drug. Over there, the entrepreneurs do it, in the Pale, to be fearless. But to throw a party, it's a very pioneering way of thinking, very progressive. Flying communist. That's what they say about it in Grad. But I say... You want to know what I personally say?" Shadows are cast beneath ZIGI's cheekbones. His black eyebrows and the creases in the corner of his eyes take on a sly look. "What?"
Matterimony, says ZIGI. I say, a matrimony of matter.
Little Ineot Khan sits cross-legged across from Malin and watches as, without the slightest warning, she pops the pills into her mouth like candy. The screw cap of the bottle crackles, and Malin wipes the water from her lips. "Well," she asks briskly, "what are we doing anyway? Let's down it now. It's a good 45 minutes before it starts working anyway. Waiting around is annoying." "You took 2? Charlotte is freaked out. "Stupid." "So what?" grunts Therese, and Khan feels terrified next to his friend, the freckled absurdist philosopher. Still thinking about the Yugo-Gradian massacre, Therese crunches the pills in his mouth. He doesn't drink any water. The sugary, bittersweet chemical fizzes in his mouth, but Therese doesn't really care. "I took it too. Flying communist," he says, and swallows before stretching his arms out like aeroplane wings. "Okay, stop," Charlotte shouts. Annie sulks. 2 is too many. Start with half. "What are we going to do with you now? Shall we call an ambulance?" "It's not necessary," Malin says with a smile. "Last time I did a whole one right away at the beginning, and it was really good. I think it'll be twice as good now. What do you think, Therese?" "I know bank robberies for which less preparation has been done than for this evening." Khan suddenly bursts out, to his own surprise. "Look, gas lanterns in case it gets dark." He angrily unpacks 3 lanterns from Therese's backpack, which he has now confiscated, and extra water. A keg filled with water clangs as it drops into the sand, because Ziggy said that under this, honestly I still don't get what the name is, under this thing, everything tastes disgusting, and everything's already getting, I don't know, strange. "Exactly." Charlotte lifts a single crimson tablet into the air between her fingers. She looks at Khan, whose budding leadership qualities confuse her, and announces expectantly, "Skal?" "Skal," answers Khan, and Jesper watches as his nerdy deskmate and Charlotte reach for water bottles together. Only Annie still hesitates in front of him, rolling the cherry speed in her palm. "Well?" She looks at Jesper, hands propping up her chin. "Skal?" Jesper casts a careless glance over her head, at the curve of her butt in her side-slit summer pants, and her crooked knees, her feet with flip-flops dangling off of them sloppily. The girl smirks. She doesn't swallow right away, letting the spit melt it on her sharp tongue. "It's sweet like that. Disgustingly sweet. I really like it. I think I like it just because I know what it does to me. You would also like it if you knew." The girl looks at Jesper, and Jesper looks over her legs. The sun explosion out in the water is cooled. A sudden gust of wind makes the reeds around them whisper. Everyone is silent and listens. The boy puts the pill in his mouth and feels the saccharin glistening on his tongue. He hesitates a moment more, and then swallows. The gall of fear rises up against the object going down his throat. The acidic environment of his stomach cavity reacts, unsuspectingly disintegrating the crimson diamond. Binding agents and dyes effervesce. Before his eyes, the waves wash over the beach, as quietly as if in a dream. And the seagulls cry. To this fading world, the boy in the white sailor hat is now nothing more than a traveler, at the mercy of semi-synthetics. Jesper surrendered himself, going last out of the 6, but still voluntarily like all the others. He doesn't know it yet, but already his undeveloped metabolism is scattering microscopic flakes of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. A non-naturally occurring combination of elementary particles settles inside him. Nothing here depends on him anymore. Everything depends on them. They have their own plan, and they have 45 minutes before it goes into action. They become compatible with him. They shape new patterns of behavior. They take over like silent weapons in a secret war. But nothing in this quietly floating rain of psychopharmacology can reach the level of the blizzard devastating Malin Lund's 13-year-old body. Khan watches, head bowed, as the girl stands up in front of him and undoes her ash-blonde braid. Her hair flutters in the wind, as if proudly expecting a child, she places her hands on her belly. Under her white polka-dotted dress,
Her metabolic center works overtime. She can already feel morning sickness upsetting her mid-digestion tenderness, the phenethylamines whizzing against her pink, petal-veined skin. The ultimate synthesis of amphetamines, non plus ultra. Her body wants to get rid of the intruder, but she is so brave, she keeps it all inside. She's also clever. She hasn't eaten all day, and she is also beautiful, very beautiful. On the cover of Girls' Magazine, like beads on an abacus, 12 diamonds stand in a row. At first, there were 24 of them. Charlotte took one, Annie took one, Jesper took one, and Con took another. Therese took two. Run the numbers yourself. As the wind ruffles Malin's hair, she already feels how everything is flooding behind her blood-brain barrier, her silent secret. An apocalyptic whirlwind of serotonin rises in her. Well, what can she say? Malin Lund has wicked kitten teeth and soft curves. She has straight A's on her 8th grade report card, and she really likes to enjoy herself. The 6 of them sit silently in a row, with their hands on their knees. Anticipation. The edge of the horizon is a dusky gold. The sun is sinking into the water, and there is a dirty blue-green plume in the sky above it. Malin measures the remaining time with her thumb like an hourglass. The sun is setting behind her thumb, and every moment the dome of the sky behind the back of the child's head sinks into a darker and darker blue. The stars light up, one after the other, and in the silence you could hear the sand at the water's edge, fizzing under the receding waves like a bottle of lemonade. Jesper stands on a solitary stretch of beach. 20 years lie behind him, and in front of him, waves rise out of the ocean. He holds the white sword blade of the surfboard up by his right side, and his other hand rests expectantly on his hip. Jesper wears black rubber for this occasion, as always, a full-body wetsuit. His light blue eyes look out of the eye holes like in a bank robber's mask. His mouth, through the mouth hole, is red from cold. The empty beach says its annual greeting to Jesper. The coastline has changed a lot. The width has crept over time like quicksand, but the basic layout always remains the same. Jesper slowly steps through the reeds and into the ocean. The 10-degree water of the North Sea clings tightly to his rubber suit, getting deeper and deeper with every step. Despite the suit's cold-resistant neoprene skin, body heat is lost to the water. It happens over time, imperceptibly. After up to 3/4 of an hour, hypothermia begins. The waves beat at his waist and swell before him in the dark grey gloom. Jesper drags himself onto the board on his stomach and starts rowing. The water splashes against the board, and the waves break around him as he rises into them. The farther he goes, the higher they rise, until finally he can no longer row through the crests of the waves. Before the swell can lift him up, Jesper presses the sharp nose of the board into the water and dives. The hypothermic icy water explodes against him. The currents swirl around him in an underwater vortex. It burns in his eyes like molten metal. The jet-black silhouette of Jesper slides against the bottomless grave of the sea, pushing the glowing white line of the surfboard into the darkness. "What comes next? What does it feel like?" asked Therese at last, when Charlotte, together with Annie, conveys to the boys the heightened physical sensations and indescribable sense of ecstasy. It all shifts above them like a high-pressure system in the darkening dome of the sky. Con is possessed by a strange indifference to the situation. He blinks his eyes behind his diamaterialist glasses, breathes calmly, and feels himself. His overweight body around him, his fluff and excitedly beating heart, as if none of it is a part of him any longer. Malin apologetically moves to Con's side, and they separate from the group. Con's quiet, horizon-striped world feels calm to be in. It seems like the Ilmarin tricolor, that vibrant combination of colors that comes to mind when the girl thinks of Con, has cooled down into a night sky. Malin tells him as much, and at the same time warns him that there's still much more to come of such openness today, when that hits. "Very good," Con nods, and moves ever closer to his new self, the self which the industrial and pathogen is making him into. For the night ahead, and for the rest of his life, too. When he needs to, he returns to this place, where everything is fine, everything is under control. And by the way, that's where it comes from. The colors of the evening sky. Turquoise, violet, and orange. They're so bright on the flag because Ilmara doesn't have the right pigments in the soil. They don't occur naturally there. That's their misfortune. That and the insanely bleaching sun. That's why they seem to have bad taste. But really, it's like that because of the soils and the sun. They'd like to do more peaceful things, but they can't. Madeline nods. You know, sometimes I just don't have anything to add. Especially to something like this. I don't know anything about colored soils. But I like what you say. So don't pay it any mind, all right? No, you don't have to apologize. I know it's interesting. The soil colors of Ilmara, the pale crossing capability of antique airships, even the nonsense I told you when I sent you home. No one needs to tell me that. They laugh quietly, as if hiding their joke from others. Khan finally falls silent and lifts his chin to the ocean again. And what would you say? How is it, that feeling, when it hits? I don't know why, but I'm in a colorful mood right now, Malin explains, and Khan calmly nods to her. I would say it's black. Very dark, a very good darkness. Khan nods again. He begins to quietly enjoy this new demeanor that has opened up for him. He'd like the whole world to talk to him, about everything, and Khan would quietly nod back, showing his humble approval. Inayat Khan's approval. This is not a joking matter. He feels his palms sweat. His hands go numb. Malin tells him that it's supposed to be that way. This is all completely normal. It means it's coming soon. It's about to hit. Khan suddenly looks at the creature in front of him with fervent care, and the creature looks back at Khan. He wants all the best for her. She trembles slightly, her teeth chattering as she squeezes a beach towel in her sweaty hands. Beautiful thoughts flash behind Malin Lund's dark green eyes. Her serotonergic neurons are being reassembled in the tree-branched network of her synapses. This law, this terrible thing called mood swings, original sin, serotonin reuptake, is being suppressed. This chemical cycle that teases Malin with its meager rations of sweets day after day, from school morning to evening, and then again when her homework is done, it stops working now. And not only that, but her neurons also pump up the unused amounts with unnatural kindness. The girl is drenched in its inky black, its overripe clusters of delicious juice, pure liquid intoxication. 50s guitar pop blares in and out from the portable record player. Her transport proteins keep pumping out more and more pleasure, and all of it becomes so much that neither her body nor her mind can react yet. I'm afraid, Malin says suddenly. It's somehow different from last time. I can still hear you, but everything else is just spinning. I feel like... I don't know how I feel. The girl's breathing speeds up visibly. She turns her back to her older sister and says quietly over her shoulder, It's so hot, Lotta. Be good, pull my dress over my head. What? Already? Charlotte quickly glances at the clock, and with her other hand, pulls down the zipper on the back of Malin's dress. There should still be 15 minutes to go. Of course, it could be less this time. Malin's voice is weak, an intermittent string. My head is spinning, I can't see anything. She raises her hands in the air. It's okay, says Khan calmly. He hasn't lost his nerve. The more complicated the situation becomes, the calmer Khan feels. He's still quietly blinking his eyes and breathing in and out. The coolness of the rolling ocean spreads before his eyes, always so vast and disinterested. If your head is spinning, close your eyes, says Khan. And he thinks that, at least for now, it would be gentlemanly not to look her way. The white wrapping paper of her dress rustles in the air as Charlotte lifts it in one go over Malin's head. The girl is barely breathing. My God, I'm afraid. My God. She collapses between her sister's knees. Her blushing lips call out in the dark, seagull-like. It hit. Khan can't stop looking any longer. The crown of Malin's hair ripples across Charlotte's dress. Her swimsuit-clad body glows in her sister's arms. Her eyes are widened to mydriasis, huge black discs, wells of pupils without the slightest hint of her green irises. The 5 of them sit in a circle around her. Malin looks at Con. "How are you so calm?" she asks. Con looks away from the softness of her body, the joints shifting feverishly before his eyes. He looks at the cold North Sea, into which the sun has sunk. The dark shadows of the ghastly clouds are disintegrating. "I don't know," says Inayat Khan, taking his wet glasses off and wiping them with a handkerchief, as he always does. "I think it's probably kicking in. I've felt abnormally calm for some time now." Charlotte caresses Malin's head. "It might be. It came on slowly for me the first time, too. Are your palms sweating?"
"Charlotte, my hands sweat all the time, but yes, I think they're sweating now, too."
Malin slides around in her sister's dress like she's between cool bed sheets. She rubs herself in there, in the cradle, in the nursery bed. The fabric of her dress crawls around her like starched laundry, smelling so pleasant and airy. Her body is only 13 years old, but in the red twilight of her central nervous system, rivers of oxytocin have already been unleashed, like in postpartum bliss. Favor and trust flow over her almost sprouted mammary glands. Orgasm hormones rise like yeast in the warmth of her fatty tissues, and she blushes through the waves of care. She loves everyone. Annie looks at her, rolling around with envy. You're feeling pretty good already." "My God, how good I'm feeling," exclaims Malin. "You can't even imagine how good it is. Say something nice. It's beating so loudly I'm afraid that otherwise things will get very sad." "That can happen." Charlotte nods her noble head and presses her hand against Malin's chest to cheek, then pulls back in horror, as if she had touched a stove iron. "My God, your heart is beating so fast, like a horse's gallop. Can you hear it?" Annie lowers her ear to her sister's chest. "Malin, how much did you take? Tell me honestly." 2 pills, Malin lies. She didn't take 2. She took 6. She strokes Annie's smooth hair with one hand and finds Con's hand above her with the other. She presses it to her chest as well, in her need for closeness, and breathes. "Everything is fine. Believe me, everything is exactly as it should be. God, how good I'm feeling." She shakes her head slowly, cautiously, as if she would be retreating from cold and heat waves. Maddened, it speeds up in front of her, the horses' mouths foaming. The matter rages, ravages. "I haven't had such a good time in my life. Everything is so soft. Feel it for yourself." The girl presses Con's hand firmly against her ribs. The circle of servants tightens around Malin. Con straightens himself up as he sits above it all. He raises his chubby chin to the girl, proudly, an indescribable peace reigning in his heart. It already moved inside him, but the feeling is growing stronger and more sure by the moment. The dark-skinned boy stares out from under his furrowed brow, his diamaterialist glasses exaggerating the now darkening wheels of his eyes like magnifying glasses. He is the Lion of Cerber, a true Khan of nations.
"Malin, listen, I think it just hit me. That magic."
He narrows his eyes. "I infected you." The girl blushes and smiles generously at her firstborn. Khan exhales and feels how his breath is eerily warm against the girl, like a sword, and the world around him tingles darkly with its joy. The atmosphere vibrates. Everything comes through a noise filter. A flock of wandering grasshoppers chirp, rubbing their legs against the filaments from which everything is made. This throbbing heart attack runs through everything, even in the soft soil under Khan's hand, and in the warm darkness of Madeleine's body. An emergency alarm sounds. The mad Sore's rally ace taps the wheels of his motor carriage in front of the house. It's getting worse and worse. The high frequencies float in his ears. Give him even a moment of quiet, and let Kenny wonder why it won't shift into 3rd gear. It's concerning, really. He looks up at the door of the old wooden manor house, hanging open, and for a single clear moment, the world stops, snowflakes floating in midair. A roof shingle rises from the house, black against the dark blue expanse of the sky, and everything is calm, quiet. It falls back to earth. A silver puff of breath rises from Kenny's mouth into the stillness of winter.
70 years ago, Nadia Harnenker steps from the edge of the bridge into the void. Her gorgeous ball gown turns inside out, the dress fabric fluttering. She falls, her head tilted back, straight as a match, and through the white jellyfish of floating petticoats, she says goodbye to the world. The river Vera flows beneath her fall, a mercurial stream laced with foam, and from far, far away, sleigh bells sound, like from a childhood memory. Inayat Khan steps out of the country house's door alongside Therese Machijek. The tall ex-agent looks around in surprise in the silence. It's so beautiful to watch the snow float in the light of the wheel hub lamp that Therese has forgotten he's holding. Kenny waves to them from the motor carriage, one hand on his heart with relief. They manage to take 2 steps where Therese is still able to hear how the snow crunches under his shoe, before the low frequencies suddenly explode. Kenny sees the 2 men turn in horror towards the house. A deafening beat sounds, the windows shaking to its bass rhythms. Little Therese dances uncontrollably, forgetting himself like a Yucatan shaman. He waves his fingers in the air. They're numb and comfortable, and the world whispers around him. A gust of wind rustles through the rushes, cooling his sweaty forehead and bare upper body. The world's benevolence is inexhaustible. The Yugograd massacre never happened, and František the Brave is coming with the SRV Revolutionary Army behind him, waving white flags. Therese could ask anything of the world, but he doesn't dare to look at what's moving right in front of him. It's not a part of his world anymore. Only the low tones of a bass drum, coming from the word mono, reflect in the black mirror of their hearing. The 6 of them are hiding among the rushes. It had seemed like such a good idea to all of them. "Let's go, yes, let's go over there. Let's make a nest," they squealed throughout. Khan lights gas lanterns in the dark. The gas has a disgusting, slug-like smell to his olfactory organs. The lighter flashes, and the lamp flickers to life. Blue tongues of fire dance in his glasses, and the surrounding rushes cast subtle shadows on the children. Khan looks at his handiwork and likes it. He likes the way the shadows flicker on Madeline's cheeks. He's not afraid to tell her that either, and she's grateful to hear it. Malin Lund is saturated, overripe, wrapped in Charlotte's dress and her own white swimwear. Mentally, she can no longer reinterpret the floods of matter into well-being, but the clear cutting in her tissues continues. Matter is now punching the girl, brutally, jealously, and nothing in this feverish night shows signs of abating. It hits again, and Malin pushes her hands to her sides from the direct impact. She chokes. The pleasant texture of the dress rubs on her lymph nodes, on the smoothness of her armpits. Her nipples are bumping against the tricot fabric, but the nerve endings have long been numb, too numb to notice. Its sensory units overheating, her physical apparatus is incapable of receiving more intoxication. Bottled water spills from the girl's hand onto the beach towel, but no one notices it. Everyone keeps chattering around her. A warm reddish glow sticks to the insides of Malin's thighs. She sags, the blacks of her eyes glowing at one and the same frequency. Burnout mode. Bouquets of lilies, chrysanthemums, and red roses wither on the sand all around. She calms down. Her body collapses under the tension. "Please comfort me. It's too good," she murmurs. "It's too sad to be." The operetta star's eyes fly open, nothing but whites, and regret, gland suffocating regret. What have I done? I, a foolish, foolish woman. Ice-cold water splashes into the lungs of Nadia's lifeless narration. Everything that Nadia has done will go down in history as a casing, lacking body heat, distorted. She's an imprint, a hallucination. Almost no one remembers who Nadia really was. They haven't even heard of her breakout hit in The Officer's Wife, and her sleazy number, The Ship Boy's Mistress, is, at best, a historical curiosity, a ridiculous exaggeration of its era. She's been forgotten. She's grown old. What can a nice dress mean to her anymore? There's nowhere to go out. But above the water's flickering surface, the chandeliers are still just being lit. Everything is yet to come. Piccolo flutes, her favorite instruments, and brisk fanfare. What a splendid sound. The rolling thunder of the timpani, the sound of water in Nadia's ears, is like a furor, life, ovations, and warm, warm tributes. She comes back to the surface, and the people, young and beautiful, are with her once again. It seems to Nadia that a real party is going on. The world will probably end soon. No, says František the Brave. There are still 8 years. What a pleasant young man. And what cheekbones, like a steppe eagle. 8 years, but then everything is still possible. Yes, everything is possible for this world, says František the Brave. Annie, the younger sister, gives Malin bottled water with the care of a nurse, and Con parts the rushes with his hand like they're curtains revealing the sea waves. He begins to speak. A couple of silhouettes are frolicking against the backdrop of dark, splashing water. They're dancing, one madly and the other in the same rhythm, but 3 times slower. Annie wraps her burning sister in a cocoon of dress fabric. Charlotte herself hatched out of there a while back. She had downed her second one 40 minutes ago. She comes to Therese through the darkness, in a whirlwind of dancing, and opens his eyes with her voice. The half-naked girl puts a water bottle in the boy's mouth and says, "Therese, you have to drink or you'll get heat stroke. And you guys too," she shouts behind her. "Don't forget to drink water." The boy takes the bottle from her and pours. His thirst is unquenchable. This way, as cool as water, his zeal finally subsides. A blissful chemical calm crushes the boy under its weight. Thumbs absently hooked in the hem of her golden panties, Charlotte Lund moves her newly hatched body in front of him. She nods along to the pounding rhythm of the bass drum, her head slightly bowed and her eyes closed. She gives a quick smile. A momentary sound rings out. Charlotte only laughs at her own jokes this way. This breaks Therese down. This and the half-dose he secretly downed. He hears a tremor of laughter echoing there, in the mystery of the stranger's cerebral cortex. How would it be to laugh that laugh? It's not about anything or with anything. It doesn't even consist of words anymore. It's long gone, lost to Therese. Matejek came down the stairs in his school uniform. How was he supposed to know that only complete outcasts wear school uniforms in Vasa, like the guys who scrubbed the walls? He only just arrived here. The eldest Lund girl came down the stairs, her booties clicking on the stepping stones, and handsome Alexander, the girl's 10 out of 10 friend, had his eloquent mouth going on enviable tours. Therese followed them into the cafeteria queue like a shadow. Charlotte Lund normally never goes to the school canteen. She doesn't eat. She has no metabolism for this world. But handsome Alexander charmed her into tagging along. Therese Matejek from the 8th grade stood behind Charlotte and poured himself some Moors. The girl turned and reached for the Moor's ladle. Therese handed her the ladle, and so it happened. "You are Charlotte Lund?" Therese mumbled the girl's semi-mythical name. "And you are?" "Therese Matejek," said Therese Matejek. And there it had stayed. Charlotte's satin hair caresses her shoulders as she shakes her head in time with the music. She raises her arms above her head, the webs of her fingers touching in the air, and under her collarbones are small, taut, bare breasts and white tan lines. She laughs. "It just hit, Therese Matejek," and happily shakes her head from side to side. "I just got it." In the sand where Therese Matejek is kneeling, the girl peels off her dark blue knee sock with her other foot, and when she crouches down in front of him, Therese Matejek says, "Me too." Waves of heat and cold collide above them. The gold of the panties sparkles between her thighs, and Therese watches. Selflessly, with the asexuality of a child. Just, well, it's beautiful to look at. They collapse on each other like houses made of matches, free of lust, just for fun. Therese, Khan, and the mad Sore's driver look outside, their heads tilted back as the pail approaches from behind the house. Inside, the bass drum thumps robustly, and outside, behind the silhouette of the building, the dark mass of the forest rolls up into the sky across the entire visible horizon. The pale rises vertically from the spruce trees like a wave, from the mountain ranges above the expanse of the world. Its horror moves slowly, humming over the world, but the world is made of matter, and matter is evergreen, ancient. It sustains itself with surprising dignity, even at the moment of disappearance. It smiles magnanimously, generously, as František the Brave once smiled behind the waste disposal facility. The peaks of the mountains darken to black, and the clearings expand. The frosty spruce fields sparkle under the stars. I'm not Kay Veronican or anything, but... Therese puffs in the cabin of the motor carriage. He rummages around in the seat. Khan stands outside, leaning on the car with his foot, copying Kenny's posture. But... Therese climbs backwards out of the machine, holding a bottle of berry wine. But it seems to me that in half an hour this will all be pale, Khan. Mita say Sanoi? Say what? What did he say? Nothing, Kenny. I wouldn't listen to him. He's not cave or an Incan or anything. Therese unscrews the cap on the berry wine with a crackle and puts the bottle to his mouth. He'd rather not speak any more. It's an oceanographic myth, the killer wave. Little Khan points in the direction of the body of water. The four of them watch from the safe warmth of a beach towel. Insects buzz in the dark around the gas lanterns. For a long time it was just that, a myth, a sailor's tale. Orda even has a mythological name for it, Alderdinger. But now they're a scientifically documented phenomenon. They really exist, you understand? This explains the dozens, hundreds of mission ships. They also say deserter wave, Dropner wave, and my favorite, weird wave. It comes seemingly out of nowhere and is well above the level of the rest of the waves. Therefore, the killer wave can also be relatively small, but, for example, in the case of 10-meter waves, they are the highest scientifically measured waves in the world. Oh yes, I've seen documentary footage of it. Khan's chin trembles, demonstrating the uplifting incredulity of the footage. Taken from a Mesk mid-ocean oil rig. You can't even imagine what a monster it is. Khan feels his tongue and mind working in complete unison. Everything comes out perfectly. He had been inept with language, his mind incomplete, but not now. May it remain so forever. He's forgotten his hand in the air. It still represents the awe-inspiring height of a killer wave in a 10-meter swell. Malin looks at how it hangs in the sky. A morbid burst of interest saves her from the clutches of her own body. She now knows what she needs. She should top up, just a little bit, then everything would start again, but even stronger. The girl's gaping mouth gulps in air. She greedily pours water from the bottle. The water beads on her mouth. Where do they come from? It's maths, right? Jesper is sitting with his hands under his head. Some mathematical rule explains this. Exactly, Khan replies. A non-linear effect. I won't act like I know what the deal is either, but whatever. It turns out that a killer wave can come together from any number of smaller waves based on some formula. If they move in a large body of water, such as an ocean, chances are that one day they will birth a near vertical, extremely unstable wave monstrosity. It absorbs the energy of the movement of other waves, and the water pulls around it more tightly. The normal waves turn into flickers, and the killer wave almost collapses under its abnormal weight. But before that, there's huge potential for destruction that it can, sow, if you will. Khan finishes with a big gesture. And you know where they occur most often? Most often in all of the world? Here. The autumn swell of the North Sea is the name of this phenomenon. Totally fucked up, Annie bursts out laughing, her foul language quietly unleashed. The girl's eyes have long been darkened by midriasis. She looks at the water from among the rushes, and it seems to little Annie that at any moment a completely fucked up killer wave would rise from it. But instead, Therese appears with Charlotte. And you know what's the most fucked up thing about it? Khan asks slyly. He wipes his diamaterialist glasses and then puts them back on. His almond eyes squint behind the magnifying lenses, filled to the brim with popular science mystique. The same effect, don't ask me how, I don't know. But the same non-linear effect also explains the pale. They use it in anthropometics. This is how the pale behaves when it sweeps over the world. As big as wagon wheels,
says Charlotte, looking into the boy's eyes. "You really have it on. By the way, Con, if I may say."
"Yes, you can say," young Ineot nods.
"You are extremely wise for your age." Charlotte's voice is ladylike and sincere. Con feels flattered by her compliment.
"And you have very, very good posture," the boy replies, and the girl laughs heartily. The crossfire of tributes and expressions of support roars like an ocean. Everything flickers like a flame, and suddenly Annie raises her head in the middle of it. She moves with the agility of an otter, craning her head as if searching for something.
"Wait a second," she says.
"Is the water out?"
Jesper doesn't notice how Annie's look is directed to him, or how everyone is waiting. He's still staring at the sea as if charmed, with his white sailor's cap on the back of his head. He doesn't feel anything special. He's relatively sober. He's just feeling hot. It's all a slight disappointment for Jesper. He hasn't even gotten to snog or anything. But killer waves, they're not too shabby. The man in the wetsuit gasps as he resurfaces. He splurts ice-cold water out of his mouth and rolls himself onto his stomach on the surfboard. A single black dot named Jesper floats half a kilometer from the beach at the mercy of the waves. He looks at the chronometer in his hand. Another quarter of an hour, and then the critical limit of his body heat will have been exceeded. Rest is in order. Jesper tries to relax his muscles, shaking from lactic acid buildup. He looks behind him, at the streak of pine trees in Charlottesville, and at the dim sky above where cloud giants are slowly collapsing. Abreast of the waves, the board rises and falls to the rhythm of his breathing. Everything is suddenly so quiet. Where did all my waves go? Forever and always, those 5 famous, terrible last words. Why do you leave me here? I stay firm to myself. I cry to every god like a wave. Will you stay this time? Will you stay this time? Are you staying this time, or what? A terrible roar is approaching. Jesper gets up, straddling the board, peels the rubber mask down to the back of his head, and looks, a lock of blonde hair on his face. Beyond the tiny speck that is his surfboard, the dark gray foam lace wall of the tidal wave rises like a cell membrane. It rises vertically until the fizzing foam of the ridge hides the sky from Jesper. The swell of the wave lifts the surfboard onto its back, and the famous interior designer rows with all his might on it. He tries to turn himself into the wave, but the Halderdinger moves with tremendous speed. It's such a pity, Annie sighs generously. I wish you could feel good too. They're standing under a lamppost on an asphalt road, and at the point where the asphalt crumbles into the sand, the enormous beach of Charlottesville begins. 45 minutes of forest darkness and hearty chatter are behind us. How nice it was to talk, just the two of us. Jesper holds the keg under the dark red water pump and pumps. The water sings as the vessel fills. Well, I'm not feeling bad either. It's nice to talk to you. And, the others also look pretty happy. And I do feel like something is happening. But Con speaks as if he has some kind of heavenly peace. And Malin is roasting. Exactly. That'd probably be the right word. Jesper puts the cap on the keg and fills 2 water bottles, putting them in his pocket. He looks questioningly in Annie's direction. Bugs beat themselves desperately against the street lamp, and the little girl under it rubs her bare legs together. The gas lantern hangs from her hand. The fuzzy hairs on her legs glow under the electric light. Annie's smile, like an idea spreading across her mouth, makes Jesper wonder. I know, she says. You're more like a noseboy anyway, with your perfume talk. Jesper crouches opposite the girl on the asphalt, and a single pill glitters in the middle of the mirror from Annie's purse. We need some kind of mortar, something hard, she says, and when the excited Jesper comes back with his stone, she already has her eyeshadow container in hand. But thanks anyway. Annie carefully crushes the chalky surface of the pill and grinds the pieces into a soft crimson powder on top of the mirror. She licks the rim of the tin with her tongue, and then carefully takes a 5 real bill from her wallet.
Jesper watches this ritual with excitement. How Annie folds the black banknote in the middle and separates the powder into stripes on the eye of the mirror. They run parallel, like rails. The 5 real bill rolls into a tube between the girl's fingers. So, you close one nostril just like this with your finger and insert this into the other. She demonstrates the process to Jesper with a rolled-up note. And then, with one long breath, you pull the whole strip up into your nose. Let me show you. Annie Ellen Lund is kneeling in front of the water pump under the streetlight, and the asphalt glistens as the girl bends over the mirror. Jesper, in his white sailor suit, watches as she busily pulls the strip up her nostril. All the powder disappears inside the paper roll in a single voracious moment. It all seems absolutely wonderful to Jesper. Annie, groaning, hits the back of her little head and hands him the banknote. It stings a bit, but pleasantly. It also starts hitting faster, but then again it doesn't last as long. Do it. And Jesper does. In the tube of the black banknote, drug powder swirls and bends. The crystals break capillaries, his nostrils itch and sting, and when Jesper stands up, everything is so quiet and beautiful. They go down into the forest together, the gas lantern rustling in Annie's hand and casting long, moving shadows from the tree trunks into the darkness of the dunes. Jesper pushes himself up from his stomach onto the board with a fluid movement. The roar of water rolls behind him, and the interior designer presses his heel down on the wedge of the board. In an instant, the resistance becomes minimal. Everything is perfect. He's gliding through the water. The board no longer touches the water. It floats on a vibrating cushion of air. Zigzagging, Jesper surfs up and down the face of the wave until he's back at the crest. You can hear how it breaks from behind, collapsing under its own weight. A huge, glistening curtain of water pulls him into it as it falls. Jesper allows it to happen, staying behind and entering the darkness of the tube, where this landscape that exists only for a small unit of time, a complex, elusive, dynamic model, achieves stability in its collapse. A wave collapse is a permanent environment, a dim, almond-shaped cavity in the raging maelstrom of water. It's smooth and quiet in there. If it only lasted forever, it would be the summer of 52. And the summer of 52 is a perpetually collapsing object. It is eating him alive. Something is wrong with this cluster of memories. Terribly wrong. It's as if he isn't possible anymore. The world does not support him. But here, for 10 seconds, everything stabilizes. Jesper strokes the water wall, and his mouth, red from the cold, always says, "Please." In the yard, where the wheels of the motor carriage have drawn a loop in the snow, Inyat Khan looks up at a farm building that hovers above him like a ghost. Electrical wire entrails hang out of the rotating object, black against the expanse of the starry sky. It drifts on into the pale with a self-evident calm. Up above, a trail of its furniture and crumbling foundation remains. In the yard, in front of him, Khan watches how a startled Therese and Kenny follow the object's path, their heads tilting back until they hit the wooden fence behind them. In a strange, panic-free concern, they all look in the direction of Ulf's crumbling house. It seems as if every little crack comes from its limestone foundation. Soon it will rise up. But nothing happens. The pail freezes in place far away behind the house. The creaking of the forest stops, and the music in the house also stops. Somewhere in the perceptible distance, on the edge of the frozen pale above, the farmhouse falls apart and disappears. Ulf, dripping with sweat, comes to the door and lights a menthol cigarette. He has taken off his sweatshirt, and, framed by the doorway, he steams in a tracksuit and a silver tank top. The self-chiller shakes his curly head, and drops of sweat fly. When Therese and Khan rush towards him, the man suddenly looks behind him and starts. "Take them!" Ulf yells, running towards them across the yard with envelopes in his hand. He waves roughly up towards the pail and puts the paper in Khan's hand. "You have to go, now." The engine revs up, and the carriage's wheels spin in the snow. The mass of the pail can no longer support its phantom weight. It breaks down. The vast clearings crumple under it in an instant, exploding with powder snow. A collapse like a shock wave whirls over the world. Spruce trees bow under the blow,
and the pale blasts open the windows of the old decaying manor house. It arches around the edges of the house, as if hesitating for a moment, and it then explodes together, encompassing it. The pail grabs the manor in its lap, and somewhere inside, in a room with a low ceiling, the young man puts on his headphones. He reads the sweeping pail like a magnetic reader reads a stereo 8 tape. The only indication of the Lund children moving in that lifeless imprint is some Jesper's quaint, impossible memory of them. The pail blows across the fields, on both sides of the village road. Its avalanche crashes onto the gravel. The rumbling wall approaches, glowing crimson from the motor carriage's taillights. Chained wheels screech on the stone. Meeny, 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 meeny. Go, 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 go. The mad Surrey's rally ace yells to his machine like a command to a horse. He presses his foot further down on the already floored gas pedal, as if the car would go faster than it already is. And looking at the speedometer, it looks like it might. Therese watches the pointer jump on 200 in the yellow light of the panel. Next to him, Con sees the pail. It shifts quietly but firmly across the windows. The electric lighting in the cabin dims. His glasses are fogging up. He's pressed deep into the leather seat from the acceleration, and he holds 2 envelopes against his heart. Behind his foggy glasses, you can't see Con's eyes going teary with joy. "I was right, Therese. I was right all along," he says. But Therese doesn't hear him, and the engine drones too loudly. Jesper and Annie come through the fumitories in the light of the gas lantern. Jesper is now holding both the lantern and the water keg, and Annie is only holding her shirt. In the glow of the bluish flame, Jesper reads the birthmarks on her arched kitten-like back. Only the delicate straps of her bra still hide them. How pleasantly the fumitories rustle, stroking his leg under his shorts. Little Jesper, terribly thirsty, sips water from a bottle. "It's divine, divine water. They should bottle it," he says, "and then they should sell it." They're greeted at the beach by whoops of joy from the thirsty members of their group. Everyone hugs. By the light of the gas lamp, Annie wipes the lipstick from Jesper's mouth and laughs. Con is sitting on Therese's shoulders and pretending that Therese is a robot. He turns his friend's head, and the other makes a robotic sound and turns to where Con is leading him. Then, when robot Therese is knee-deep in the water, Con is thrown off his shoulders. He manages to admire the jellyfish for a moment, but the others are already running after them in their swimsuits. Little glowing child bodies go into the water in the dark. Sand sinks under bare feet. Silky water laps around ankles. Bodies hypersensitive to the substance react to every last touch. Plumes of sand rise between Annie's toes, so she curls her toes into a nice ball and carefully steps forward. They all go very slowly, hands floating on the cool surface tension of the water. They squeal at times, making the most of every moment of their anointing ecstasy, and the ointment itself receives them, flowing around their hips and tummies. It's cool and flawlessly viscous. Malin cannot. Once the water moistens her breasts and armpits, she sinks completely into it. Only the hymn of surrender remains on the surface of the sea. She digs her nails into her palms and feels momentarily like she will break. It won't fit inside her. Hormones are already distorting her slippery body. Her pelvis has expanded for birth. Unbearable well-being is throbbing deep in her hips. In the grave of her bodily fluids, a tiny homunculus closes its pin-sized eyes. The animal, curled up in a semicircle, opens its mouth to scream, but there is nothing, no sound. It had never been there. Malin loosens. Everything is so impossibly good. Everything goes dark and echoes there, in the depths of the water. Charlotte's glowing white shadow slides past her, and she feels someone's soft hands around her shoulders. It's Con. He lifts her to the surface, and she breathes in the salty air, floating there. Water drips from her hair, and the black sky above shines with an endlessly detailed bouquet of stars, like splashes of milk. All 6 of them look up and bob there like that, in a semicircle. The stars shine in the black mirror of the water. They flicker faintly, scattered. Only Inayat Khan's spectacle lenses reflect all their brilliant sharpness. "They are no longer there." Khan hears a weakening voice between his arms. He looks down, the stars sliding off his glasses. In place of the stars, Malin Lund's eyes shift, and the darkness of her mouth moves to shape every word. "But I still see them."
And then, when they woke up in the morning among the reeds, like kittens in a nest, they collected their garbage properly. They put their sun-dried clothes back on in the blindingly bright light. Their eyes hurt, and the world around seemed foreign in a friendly way. Everything had been said yesterday in the dark of the night, and there was no need to repeat it. They went to the tram stop, smiling awkwardly and chattering tiredly. There they agreed to a meeting in the last week of August. The girls would be back from their family trip to Grad by then. They couldn't say the exact day, so they would call and send postcards. At the meeting at the end of August, they also planned to discuss what the changed state of affairs will look like at school, and in the real world in general. There was no kissing or anything like that at the station. However, a lot of looks were exchanged, filled with secret bodily messages and the regret of leaving. The girls got on the tram, and the boys went to Teresa's father's cottage. That was the last time they saw each other.